Black man handcuffed for no reason. Discover the incredible call that changed everything. The sun shone brightly over Maplewood, where laughter spilled into the streets during the annual block party. Families gathered, eyes sparkling, as Jason, a 35-year-old black man and local hero, made his rounds. The smell of fresh pastries wafted from his bakery, where love was kneaded into every dough. But this bright day turned dark when the laughter turned to chaos in an instant. Jason joined a friendly basketball game, dribbling the ball like he'd done countless times before. Kids cheered, and the adults laughed, enjoying camaraderie. Then, a misunderstood exchange happened, and suddenly, everything spun out of control. Neighborhood kids misread a joke meant to connect, and a whisper turned into shouts. Before Jason could process, police sirens blared. Confusion set in. "I was just playing," Jason called, as officers handcuffed him. Panic spread through the crowd, neighbors gasping, disbelief etched on their faces. Jason wouldn't hurt a fly. They cried. Yet, in that moment, the community fractured. The joy of the day shattered. As news spread like wildfire, Jason's family began to split under the weight of this incident. Malik, a decorated veteran with fire in his heart, felt the heat of anger igniting. "We can't be silent," he cried, determination burning in his eyes. His fists clenched tightly, echoing a fury that craved justice. Meanwhile, Sister Maya, a level-headed social worker, took a deep breath and urged everyone toward peace and understanding. "We need to talk, not fight," she implored, noticing the tension brewing. The family's contrasting passions collided, leaving them in a bitter rift. Each sibling, stewing in their reality, struggled through a storm of emotions. Justice versus healing. And then it happened. Jason received a call from Rebecca, a fellow business owner who had witnessed the chaos unfold. "Jason, I know you. This isn't who you are," she said softly. Her voice was a lifeline in a sea of despair. Her offer of support carried weight, like a gentle reminder that the world still held goodness. It was a fragile bridge, slowly connecting the fracturing family as Rebecca recounted the event to the community. As tensions rose, whispers turned into loud debates, forcing Maplewood to confront its own biases. "Why didn't we see?" they began to ask one another. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. Jason felt a swelling pride mixed with trepidation. Now he had a choice. Stand up for himself and champion a cause larger than himself. Tension built as a public forum approached, voices prepared to be heard. Would this lead to healing, or would it magnify divisions? The anticipation hung thick in the air, tinging every heartbeat with hope and fear. Jason's resolve was clear. He believed in his community, and just when the weight felt the heaviest, a glimmer of hope sparkled through. Could this one moment define their journey forward? In the shadow of uncertainty, the stage was set for a transformation that could reshape everything. The day of the public forum arrived, and the community center buzzed with the hum of anticipation, the walls reverberating with unvoiced concerns. Families filed in, faces a mix of anxiety and resolve. Jason stood outside near the entrance, heart racing, trying to shake off the chill of doubt creeping in. He took a deep breath, the scent of coffee mingling with the faint sweetness of pastries still lingering around. This was his chance to set the record straight. Inside, the space was filled with familiar faces, friends, neighbors, and fellow business owners. Jason exchanged nods of encouragement with Rebecca. She had agreed to stand by him today, ready to speak out after witnessing the injustice unfold. It felt comforting and intimidating all at once. As they settled into the seats, Jason glanced around. Malik was already up front, his military bearing on full display as he addressed the crowd. "We're here to talk about what happened," he began, voice deep and steady. "This isn't just about Jason. It's about all of us standing together against injustice." His words echoed with the thunderous applause of accountability. Jason shifted in his seat, feeling a surge of emotion. He knew his brother was on fire for justice, but the flames of anger often scorched the delicate threads of understanding. That was his sister's domain. Maya's voice cut through the room of excitement like a soft breeze, calm yet powerful. "And while we address the anger," she said, "we must also encourage healing. Divisions only drive us apart." The atmosphere crackled with energy as the dialogue unfolded. Stories flowed freely. A single mother recounted how she felt unsafe walking the streets after dark, eyes constantly scanning for danger. A young teenager nervously stepped forward to share his personal experiences with prejudice. Each voice was a ripple, pulsating through the room, shifting the energy toward a collective consciousness. Jason's heart began to race even faster. These lived moments, raw and heavy, molded a shared destiny. This was not only about him anymore, it was a fight against years of misunderstanding. Finally, it was his turn. The podium awaited him like an open mouth, ready to swallow his courage or release his truth. Jason approached, palms clammy and heart thundering, but he stood tall. "Thank you all for being here," he began, voice clearer than he had anticipated. "That day, all I wanted was to connect, to share joy with my community." He hesitated, feeling the weight of the crowd's attention pressing down. "But instead, I was treated as a threat. This isn't just about me, it's about systemic issues that affect us all." For a brief moment, silence filled the room, a collective breath held tight. Then, like the first drops of rain, murmurs began to bubble. Fear gave way to understanding. Jason pressed on. "If we want to heal, we must first acknowledge the pain." Applause erupted, not just for his words but for the hope they ignited. Yet, as the commotion rose, so did a ripple of fear that something deeper still lurked beneath the surface, waiting to awaken. Just then, Jason noticed a group of men at the back of the room, whispering furtively. Their expressions hinted at discontent, and he could feel his pulse quickening yet again. What if this wasn't the true beginning of healing, but rather the spark that would ignite a flame? A shadow of uncertainty loomed as they positioned themselves quietly in the corner. What were they plotting? Would this moment lead to a deeper understanding or veer into chaos? The room suddenly felt smaller, and the air thickened with tension. What would happen next? Jason's heart sank as he watched the group of men whispering in hushed tones, the facade of unity slowly cracking under the weight of underlying tensions. Their furtive whispers sent a chill down his spine. He thought this meeting would bring them together, but now it felt like a fragile piece hanging in the balance. His eyes darted back to Malik, whose confidence seemed to mask an awareness of the room's shifting energy. The applause from Jason's speech faded, yet the tightness in the air persisted. He scanned the audience, searching for a sign, an encouraging smile, a nod of solidarity. But instead, he saw doubt etched on some faces. Fear rippled through the crowd like a tidal wave, a reminder of everything they were confronting. Malik cleared his throat, attempting to regain control. "This isn't about fear, it's about the hope for a better future," he said, his voice rising above the din. "It's about breaking barriers, standing tall against the tides that seek to divide us." Jason felt the warmth of shared determination begin to radiate from the crowd again, yet it was punctured by glances thrown back at the men by the door. There was something unsettling about their presence, and his instinct screamed for caution. As Malik continued, Jason felt compelled to turn back to Rebecca, hoping for her calming presence. She was already looking at him, her brow furrowed but her eyes full of understanding. "You did great," she mouthed, her small smile a beacon in the storm, but the uncertainty loomed larger as one of the men from the back began to stand up, interrupting Malik's powerful call for unity. His voice, sharp and accusing, cut through the room. "What are you all doing?" he shouted. "You're fooling yourselves if you think this gets rid of the real problems. This isn't about fixing anything. It's a distraction from the truth. Gasps echoed through the crowd as tension curled like a snake, ready to strike. Jason felt his stomach drop. Here was the vulnerability of their initiative, exposed. "We're just trying to start a conversation," Malik countered, his resolve faltering under the weight of hostility. Jason could see the crowd's anxiety shift into something darker, like a thunderstorm looming on the horizon. He stepped forward impulsively, feeling a surge of urgency. "We're here to listen," he called out. "To each other. That's where we start." But the man had already turned, shaking his head disdainfully. "Listen. You think that's enough? They don't care about our needs, not really. This is just the same old song and dance." Before Jason could react, the murmurs escalated into a cacophony of dissent and disbelief. People began to rise from their seats, some shouting for calm while others joined the man's rallying cry. Fear had transformed into a force, and the meeting that was intended to heal was now teetering on the brink of chaos. Jason's pulse raced. They needed to reclaim the narrative not just for themselves, but for everyone in that room. "Please," he shouted over the clamor. "Let us talk. We must not let anger drown out our voices. We have to listen, really listen, or we'll lose everything we've built in this moment." The crowd began to quiet, tension still crackling, but there was a flicker of something hope. Grit? Jason couldn't tell. And then, the unexpected happened. One of the men stepped forward, his defiance softening. "What if we don't want to listen to the same old stories? What if we want something different?" Jason took a deep breath, heart pounding. "Then let us create it together, but we have to start with honesty. Join me." The lights of the community center flickered, momentarily dimming, and in that moment, uncertainty hung in the darkness, a prelude to the tempest ahead. What if this was the moment everything changed? What if they could turn dissent into dialogue? The path forward was shrouded in doubt, but now more than ever, it felt vital to step into that unknown. What was waiting just beyond the edge of confrontation? Jason could feel the air shift as the crowd began to settle, the intensity of their emotions morphing into cautious curiosity. The man who had stepped forward lingered, eyes searching the room, gauging the temperature of the collective spirit. Jason seized the moment, his heart beating steadily against the weight of the silence that enveloped them. "Here we are," he said, gesturing to the faces surrounding him. "Not just here physically, but here emotionally. All these voices, all these stories in one room, this is strength." Lena, a woman from the back who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "But how do we make sure our stories matter? How do we ensure they don't get lost in the noise?" There was a desperation in her voice, one that resonated with many. "That's exactly the point," Jason replied, the words flowing as though they had been waiting to be spoken. "We need to share. Every one of us has a story that touches the heart of our community. If we leave our truths in the shadows, then we're letting fear win." Malik nodded, stepping beside Jason. "We talk. We don't just listen, we engage. We create a space where we can pour out our fears, our hopes, and our reality without judgment." He paused, taking a deep breath. "But it starts with trust." The man who initiated the anger stood silent, a flicker of contemplation crossing his features. It was as if the walls he had built around himself began to crack. Jason noticed him shift on his feet, the defensiveness ebbing ever so slightly. "Trust is hard to come by," the man finally spoke, his voice quieter. "Every time we've tried, it feels like we've been ran over by the same old train of neglect." Jason took a step closer, the distance between them charged with hope. "Then let us build something new. Something more than just a meeting. Let us create a movement grounded in understanding, where voices can echo instead of fade." Lena raised her hand again, determination written on her face. "I want to share about the night when my nephew got stopped by the police for no reason. He came home shaking, terrified of something he didn't understand. We need to talk about these experiences and face them together. A murmur of agreement rippled across the audience, and Jason saw others beginning to nod in support of Lena. That single act of vulnerability ignited a cascade. Men and women began to share their own stories, little ones, heart-wrenching accounts, and painful crossroads that had brought them all to this very moment. Each revelation spun threads of connection, bridging gaps that had seemed insurmountable moments before. Jason watched as Malik stepped in to guide conversations, ensuring everyone had their place, everyone had their voice. In a small corner, Rebecca stood with her phone, capturing this newly formed tapestry of raw emotions. She recognized the weight of the historical moment unfolding right before her eyes, and now more than ever, Jason needed her. He turned to her, the determination in his gaze urging her to join him on stage. "Rebecca," he called. "Come share. Your perspective matters." All eyes turned to her, the warmth of encouragement washing over her like sunlight breaking through a storm. She took a deep breath, the weight of the moment propelling her forward. Just then, a loud crashing sound reverberated from the back of the room. Jason spun around, fear saturating the air once more. It was the men who had lingered by the door. They were pushing through the crowd, anger written all over their faces. "What do you think you're doing?" one shouted. "This is our place. You don't belong here." Jason's heart raced again, sensing chaos creeping in once more. Could they really create change, or was this all about to implode? The essence of their hard-earned dialogue felt threatened, and dread settled deep in his gut. As fists clenched and tensions escalated, Jason realized the fight wasn't just for peace, it was for survival, for a future. "No!" he yelled, standing firm in the space he had worked so hard to create. "We can't let fear tear us apart now." But as he looked into the faces of his audience, he had to wonder, could unity be restored amidst the rising storm? Or was this only the beginning of a much fiercer battle? "Back off!" Jason shouted again, his voice cutting through the chaos with a fierceness he didn't know he possessed. He could feel the crowd's anxiety shooting up like steam from a boiling pot. The tension was palpable, thick enough to cut with a knife. But Jason stood resolutely at the heart of that storm. The man who initially fueled the anger rolled his shoulders back, emboldened somehow by Jason's defiance. "Why should we listen to you? You think a few shared stories will change anything? You don't know us." His words dripped with venom, and several faces around him nodded in agreement, their anger fueling the air. But as Jason scanned the room, he caught tiny glimmers of defiance in the eyes of those who had just shared their pain. They weren't about to back down now. "We might not know each other," Jason replied, his voice measured but loud, "but we are here together. These stories matter. We can learn from each other's fears instead of letting them separate us." With every word, he could feel the ground beneath him shifting. The men at the back hesitated, unsure of themselves. Jason's confidence might have inspired them to reconsider. Around him, he could see Lena and Malik preparing to step into the fray, standing shoulder to shoulder as allies. Lena's voice rose above the din. "You're right. We don't know each other yet. But we could start right now. We're tired of the same old hate that just cycles around and around." The tension seemed to ripple as the crowd began murmuring again, unsure where to focus their energy. Some shouted in agreement, while others seemed to be wrestling with doubt. Rebecca, finally feeling the weight of the moment, took a step forward. "What if we took this moment, this anger, and channeled it into something good? Something that could shape our lives? We're all human. Let us be honest." Her voice quivered, but there was a fire in her words. "Easy for you to say," one of the men yelled back. "You don't know anything about what we deal with every day." Rebecca paused, her breath hitching. "Then let me learn. Don't you see? We need to share and listen. If we don't open that door, what hope is there?" A moment of silence hung in the air, the crowd teetering at the brink of understanding. Jason realized they had to find the right angle to draw them in. "What's it going to take?" he asked. "What can we do to repair the wounds?" What stories do you have that we can learn from? We are tired of hurting each other. The man's eyes flickered as he wrestled with Jason's challenge. What if nobody cares? What if all this is for nothing? His voice softened ever so slightly, revealing a crack in his tough exterior. Then let us make them care. Jason declared, the rhythm of his heart echoing in his ears. Let this be the moment we start to change the narrative. It begins today, right here, right now. Gradually, the hostility shifted. Individuals in the audience began to share nods and glances, uncertainty morphing into hope. Jason felt the ground shift underfoot again, this time toward a more solid foundation. Okay, said the man, reluctantly stepping forward, uncertainty still etched in his face. I do have a story. An experience that shook me to the core. The crowd held its breath, hanging on to every potential word. But before the man could speak, another crash echoed behind them. This time it was the sound of shattering glass. A frantic shout broke through the settling storm, and panic surged once more. What now? Jason wondered, his resolve steady but shaken. Would they fall apart again, or open up even more? As urgency crackled in the atmosphere, Jason caught the eye of Malik and Lena. They exchanged unspoken determination. This conversation had to continue, no matter the cost. But would those who were just beginning to open up retreat into their shells or stay and face the storm together? Jason turned abruptly, his heart racing as he faced the source of the chaos. The crowd was shifting awkwardly, and he could see a figure stumbling back, a mix of panic and rage etched across their face. The glass had come from a nearby window. Everybody, stay calm. Jason shouted, his voice steady yet urgent. He could feel his heart pound against his ribs. The air thickened again with tension as people shuffled and cried out, instinctively seeking safety. The irony was not lost on him, they had just begun the hard work of connecting, and now they stood on the brink of unraveling. Let us move toward the exits. Someone yelled, their voice getting lost in the frenzy. But Jason stood his ground. No. We need to stay together, he insisted, locking eyes with Malik and Lena. This is the moment we prove we can unite. We can't let fear tear us apart. Lena shot him a look of fierce determination. You're right. We can't back down now. We need to face whatever's going on and stand together. Rallying around Jason, they inched closer toward where the original anger had begun to simmer. Lena's eyes scanned the crowd, hoping to find any shift in the atmosphere. Just then, they heard a voice from behind. A man they had assumed would retreat instead stepped closer, his body tense but resolute. I'm here, and I'm with you. He shouted. Let's not let this moment escape us. You see. Jason said, his chest swelling with a mix of pride and hope. We can keep this going. We're stronger than our fears. In that moment, the glass that shattered wasn't just a window, it felt like a barrier breaking. People began emerging from their frenzy, eyes shifting from fear to curiosity. They were witnessing something powerful. Who are you? Asked the man who had started the earlier confrontation, his voice a mixture of defiance and an unexpected willingness to engage. I'm Jason, he replied. And I don't have all the answers, but I care enough to try. We all do. We can work towards something better if we can just talk. His words landed softly, dissolving the animosity that had been brewing moments before. The nervous murmurs ignited once again, hesitation mixing with intrigue. One elderly woman stepped forward, her hands trembling. I lost my son to violence, she said, her voice cracking but her resolve steady. This is what happens when we don't listen. Behind her, others shifted, nodding in understanding and sympathy. Stories began to emerge, tales of loss, love, rage, and pain. Each voice seemed to melt another shard of fear, and little by little, the atmosphere shifted. Jason could feel it, like the turning tide, a swell of hope against the broken backdrop of anger that had threatened to pull them under. Yet even in that moment of connection, Jason sensed an undercurrent of something darker. Had they really turned a corner, or were they merely buying time? As individuals shared their experiences, Jason felt the weight of their shared confusion. The fragmented piece hung in the air, teetering like a fragile branch in the wind. What if they choose hate in the end? He whispered to Malik in a moment of vulnerability. People were bonding, yes, but the fear, this ugly, potent fear, hadn't disappeared. He knew that if another trigger emerged, they could easily collapse into chaos once more. But what if the stories we share tonight are enough to plant seeds of change? Malik replied, his voice resonating with cautious optimism. In that moment, Jason realized that they needed to talk, and they needed to listen. But they also needed to act, to create a plan that could channel all this emotion into something concrete. Just as he opened his mouth to share those thoughts, another crash echoed from the far corner of the room. What now? Would they be able to keep this fragile unity intact, or would they face yet another challenge that threatened to tear them apart once again? The crowd recoiled at the sound, the tension snapping back like a taut rubber band. Jason felt every heart in the room skip a beat, eyes darting toward the source of the latest chaos. He moved instinctively towards the noise, impulsively believing that if he could just get closer, he could diffuse whatever was brewing. "Stay with me," he urged Malik and Lena, his voice cutting through the anxious whispers. With determination, they pushed through the shifting crowd, an unbreakable trio determined to keep the fragile peace they'd just begun to sew. As they approached, Jason saw two figures grappling near the door. A young man, his face twisted in alarm, struggled against a police officer. The uniform stood out stark against the backdrop of a room full of uncertainty. The officer's grip was firm, and his expression hardened, an unsettling mirror to the previous chaos. "Please. I didn't do anything," the young man shouted, panic rising in his voice. "Calm down," the officer barked, tension emanating from every line of his face. "Just comply, and this can go smoothly." Jason's heart raced again, a mix of fear and resolve surging through him. This wasn't just another argument, this felt like a flashpoint. He could see Malik's jaw set, and Lena's hands clenched into fists. They all understood that this moment could either build bridges or set them ablaze. "Hey!" Jason called out, his voice steady as he stepped forward despite the knot in his stomach. "What's happening here?" The officer blinked at him, confusion momentarily breaking through his determination. "This doesn't concern you. Back off." "Sure it does," Jason said, heart pounding. "That could be any one of us. We need to talk this out, not just drag him away." The crowd shifted behind him, a ripple of murmurs cutting through the air. They were listening, really listening. Would they unite again, or would the spark become a blaze? Malik stepped beside Jason, his voice low but firm. "We're all human beings here. If we don't address this together, we're lost." The officer hesitated, glancing between Jason and the young man, caught in the tension of the moment. Meanwhile, the crowd's discomfort sizzled beneath the surface, eyes wide with apprehension but ready for connection. "Let him go," Jason said, feeling every eye on him. "Let us talk. We're all here wanting to understand, not fight." Lena added, "We need empathy now more than ever. Compassion can go a long way. No one should feel helpless." The officer's posture seemed to falter, his grip loosening slightly. "I'm just doing my job," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Then do your job and listen," Malik urged, stepping forward as the young man paused, fear still etched on his features but with a glimmer of hope breaking through. "This isn't about confrontation, it's about understanding. We can be better together." Jason held his breath, watching the officer's internal battle play out. The faces around them were a tapestry of emotions: fear, anger, compassion, and now curiosity. Moments stretched into what felt like eternities, the room heavy with possibility. And just as Jason thought they might be breaking through, another loud crash echoed, this time much closer. It sent shivers through the crowd. What now? He thought, gripping the nearest podium for stability. Were they ready to open this Pandora's box yet again, or was this the moment that would define them all? As the room held its breath, Jason realized that everything they had built was about to be tested again. How far could unity stretch before it snapped? His instinct set in motion. Would they have enough courage to face the upcoming storm, or would fear win once more? The crowd held its breath as the latest noise reverberated through the room. Jason's heart raced, matching the quickening pulse of the crowd around him. He clenched his fists, feeling the weight of responsibility bearing down on him. This wasn't just a moment anymore, it was the culmination of 1,000 voices yearning to be heard, wanting change, and knowing that silence wouldn't bring it. What was that? Lena whispered, her voice barely breaking through the tension. Jason could see her eyes darting around, searching for the source, searching for reassurance. Something fell. A window? Malik suggested, but even he didn't sound convinced. He shifted, readying himself to step into the chaos again. Before they could analyze the sound, a figure pushed through the crowd, a woman, her face flushed with urgency. She sidled next to Jason, her voice urgent. There's been an event outside. Demonstrators clashed with the police. I heard people screaming. It might not be safe here. The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Panic rippled through the crowd, electric. It was as if someone had thrown a torch into a barrel of gasoline. Everyone, stay calm. Jason called out, trying to drown out the rising tide of fear. We need to keep our heads here. We're all in this together. But chaos was already unfurling. People began to back away from the door, casting panicky glances at one another. The officer's grip on the young man tightened as the unease grew, defiance sparking in the young man's eyes. Let him go. Someone shouted from the back, prompting a cascade of agreement from others. Jason's pulse surged. He had been fighting for increased empathy, for understanding, but now he was faced with an undeniable truth: fear was contagious. People's faces were no longer just reacting to the situation, they were transforming into expressions he recognized from news feeds: fear, anger, resolution. He took a deep breath, rallying every ounce of courage. Look. We can't afford to let fear pull us apart. We know what happens when that happens. Jason felt the weight of his words. We need to turn this around. Let us make a choice here. We can de-escalate this. Together. He turned to the police officer, who looked bewildered. You can't take him. Let us talk to each other. In this moment, we can either be a part of the solution, or we can let the fear dictate our actions and drive us to violence. Malik nodded, stepping forward again. People here want to speak, want to listen. If we focus on each other, we can heal instead of hurt. The world is watching us. A moment of clarity flashed across the officer's face. Caught between duty and the rising tide of emotion, he hesitated, his grip faltering even more. The crowd remained hushed, every heart beating as one, waiting, but then came another crash, louder and more disruptive. It was followed by shouts, chaos spilling in from outside. Jason flinched at the sound, heart thumping louder than ever, unsure if hope or dread would prevail. Stay strong. He called out, though doubt crept into his heart. He could feel the atmosphere thinning, unity teetering on the edge, and they had no idea what was happening outside. What if the moment of hope was slipping away? What if this time, fear would consume them all? Hold on. Jason shouted. We have to stand together now, more than ever. And as the apprehensive crowd considered Jason's urging, another sound rang out, this time, a voice from the back. They're coming in. Fear clawed at Jason's throat. How could he keep it all together? What would happen next? The door burst open, and a flood of police officers surged into the room, their uniforms stark against the chaos. The crowd recoiled, instinctively falling back. Jason's heart pounded, each beat an urgent reminder of the stakes. Everyone, step back. Remain calm. One officer commanded, but his tone only fueled the rising terror. The young man, still caught in the officer's grip, widened his stance defiantly, the flames of his courage growing higher against the swirling storm of fear around him. Jason could practically taste the tension, the metallic tang of adrenaline mingled with the musky scent of panic in the air. "Wait! What is going on?" Jason yelled, fighting through the panicked murmurs. He stepped forward, pushing through the throng, desperation igniting his resolve. "We don't need violence. We can handle this together." The crowd shifted, collective breath held as they observed the officers. Their eyes flickered with uncertainty, witnesses on the brink of a crisis, searching for guidance. "Do not make this worse," another officer barked, glancing at Jason with a mix of authority and confusion. It was as if he was wrestling with two opposing emotions, a duty to enforce the law and the undeniable pull of the mob pleading for peace. "Listen," Jason implored. "The man you've got is not a threat. He's one of us. We can talk this out." The thoughts flitted through Jason's mind like a movie reel. He recalled faces of those he fought for, moments of anger, loss, but also hope. He swallowed hard, anchoring himself in the realization that this was a defining moment. The crowd needed a reason to hold on, a beacon amidst the unrest, but the shout from the outside grew louder, punctuated by the sound of a rubber bullet ricocheting against the pavement outside. Jason's stomach twisted. There was no time to waste. "We have to control the narrative," he shouted, his voice booming through the panic. "If we let fear reign, we lose everything." As if caught in the crosshairs of his own words, a moment of stillness washed over the crowd. The officers blinked, uncertainty creeping into their hardened gazes. The pressure hung thick, building like storm clouds ready to burst. "Look at each other," Malik hollered, shoulders squared, stepping beside Jason. "See the faces around you. These are people. We're not just a crowd, we're a community. Together." Jason urged, pulling in the energy he felt surging from the crowd. "Let us show them we won't be torn apart by fear." The chant began, softly at first, an echo of hope. "Together. Together." The officers looked baffled, the sound of unified voices washing over their imposing figures like a gentle tide. Jason seized the moment. "If you want peace, you need to listen. Let us talk. Let us reason." Just then, a familiar face pushed through the front, Lena, breathing heavily but determined. "Jason. The message, don't forget, we have to show them." "Right." He realized, taking a deep breath. "Let us pivot this. Show the love we're capable of." The chant swelled into a swell of voices. Unity. Unity. It reverberated off the walls, creating a palpable force. The officers' composure began to falter, uncertainty crawling across their faces, but just as a shred of hope pierced through, another crash echoed against the floor. A loud bang from outside drew their attention, melding with chaos. The grim reminder that even in this moment of potential unity, danger loomed ever closer. Jason's heart sank, understanding that every moment counted. "Hold to hope." Jason called out, seeing fear threatening to spill from eyes again. "What will we choose?" The room held its breath, and just as he feared disillusionment would sink back in, a voice shouted from the back, "They're pushing forward." What would they decide? Would they rise or fall? Jason felt the weight of the moment pressing down. The pressure surged within him, pushing him forward to face the unknown. Would they stand? Would they unite? Or was this fight just beginning? Jason's heart raced, pounding in time with the escalating chaos around him. The frightened faces of his neighbors were all too familiar, reflective not only of what had happened in the last few days but also what had been left unspoken for too long. "We need each other now more than ever," he shouted, urging the crowd to hold firm against the tidal wave of fear. Yet outside, the shouting intensified, mingling with the sounds of conflict, bodies colliding, shields clashing against despair. The room felt electric, crackling with a mix of anger and determination. Would this wave of energy lift them toward resolution, or would it drown them in strife? Together. Together. Jason led the chant steadily. We stand as one. We won't let fear divide us. He could see Malik's stance firm beside him, lips set in a determined line as he nodded, rallying the crowd to join in, and then, something shifted in the atmosphere. The tension began to dissipate, replaced by this shared conviction that echoed from heart to heart. The mantra rolled through the crowd, voices growing louder, more unified. Together. Together. Behind the officers, Jason noticed a moment of hesitation on their faces. Instinctively, their rigid postures softened. Just as they began to lower their shields of authority, the door burst wide open again, and Lena came rushing in, breathless but fierce. They're rushing in. Everyone stay together. She yelled, but her voice quickly intertwined with the force of the chant. We're not just voices, we are a community. The sudden wave of energy shifted when one officer turned to his fellow officers in confusion. What do we do? One whispered, clearly shaken by the change in the crowd's demeanor. Listen. Jason shouted, cutting through their uncertainty. You are here to serve this community. We want to talk, not fight. The young man still caught in the officer's hold clenched his jaw, emboldened by Jason's courage. Let me go. We want to resolve this. The room was thick with potential, the air humming with anxious hope. With each passing second, Jason could feel the barrier that had threatened to sever them crumbling away. Togetherness blossomed where division had thrived moments ago. And then, as if in beautiful slow motion, the officer's grip loosened. Fine. Talk. He snapped, frustration evident. Jason seized this victory like a lifeline, sensing a shift, a glimmer of possibility. Thank you. Let us connect, let us understand. We're humans first. We can heal this. Beneath the weight of the crowd's gaze, confidence surged through him. Just then, he heard a trembling voice. An elderly woman stepped forward from the back, weaponized by her sorrow. My son was a victim. He was treated like a criminal and he wasn't. Gasps echoed through the masses. Jason watched as she continued, pouring out her grief, her words weaving a spell of shared humanity. We need compassion, the kind that sees the person behind the badge and the fear. Let us make a real change. Someone called from the crowd. Voices surged in support. Jason felt the collective heartbeat, each thud resonating with the stories told. Malik leaned closer to Jason, voice low but urgent. They're with us. Keep going. A wave of empowerment washed over Jason. It starts right here, right now. He said, clenching his fists in defiance but softened with compassion. We acknowledge our pain, our experiences. We work together, create unity instead of hatred. Each story shared dripped with authenticity, each voiced concern was a thread stitching them together. Jason watched as the young man pulled away from the officer, trembling yet resolute. He stepped towards the stage. I want my story to count. I don't want to be a statistic. Yes. Jason exclaimed, every fiber in him electrified by the ordeal they shared. All the pain had been real, but so was their desire for connection. Little by little, fresh whispers merged into an avalanche of desire. People proclaimed their stories, disappointments, triumphs, but most of all the longing for unity. The officer stepped back, his expression softening further, revealing the human within the uniform. This is why we need to work together, he whispered. Doubt vanished, replaced by something akin to solidarity. Cheers erupted from the crowd. We need time. To build understanding, Jason shouted, spreading his arms wide, the connection palpable. Then, as the chorus of voices swelled around him, Jason felt the solid ground of unity beneath his feet. They weren't just talking about mistakes or concerns, they were crafting the fabric of a new beginning. The foundation was formed not out of fear, but out of shared experience and compassion. That he clapped his hands, signaling for quiet, feeling the moment was critical. We can be better. Jason declared with fervor. We can fall together or rise together. Let us build a safe space for everyone, regardless of our past. This is our time. Finally, seen in each other's eyes, there lay an understanding. And as the moments rolled forward, they claimed their narrative. Smiling faces turned towards him, reflectively echoing, "Together. Together." At that moment, the world outside the community center seemed to fade, and within their voices they found strength far more potent than any storm. This is what it meant to transform a moment of despair into lasting change. Together, they were stronger, a true reflection of love, commitment, and resilience. The journey ahead would not be easy, but they had forged a path to healing. Now with hearts aligned, they prepared to embrace tomorrow. So, what are you waiting for? Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and comment your reactions and feelings about this powerful ending. And please, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Don't wait not even one more second to share. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.